Hello, this is the Longbox Review comic book podcast. I am your host, Eric. Welcome to the show. On today's show, I have a special guest, Mike Atchison from the Campus Comics Cast and Mike's Comic Shop Roadshow podcasts. And that's a mouthful, I'll tell you.
I don't know how special I am, unless you take it in a different connotation, but I appreciate the adjective.
So welcome to the show, Mike.
Thank you.
I've told you this before we started recording, but I want everybody to know I've been a big fan of yours ever since you appeared on an episode of the Daily Rios. And I think you were doing one of those book club episodes with Peter.
That's right.
I forget the book now, but
it was the Green Turtle was the character, I believe, but it was Shadow Hero.
Yes. I bought that because in large part because of that conversation. I still have to read it though. It's on my shelf.
It's well worth the time. Yeah, I totally support that.
Yeah, but I listened to you and Peter talk about that book, and I thought, wow, Mike really knows how to talk about comic books. So I messaged Peter. Actually, I'm sorry, I've been stalking you a little bit. I messaged Peter and said, "Hey, can you give me his contact information?" And that's when I think I eventually reached out to you and complimented you on that. And then from there I followed you to started listening to the Campus Comics Cast. Mm-hmm. And I really like what you and Scott and Shad do. Is it? I forget. Is it a weekly or a bi-weekly show, or is it whenever you guys release an episode?
It's typically twice a month. One of the episodes is previews, but we try to get twice a month, sometimes 3.
Yeah, and you have let's see. Besides the previews, yeah, you normally have that second episode where you spotlight a series or a few issues of something. I really love the first 5 issue thing that you do. Trivia and you almost always end up with a CLZ shake. Yeah. Which is I love that format because it gets the listener to hear you guys talk about a bunch of different comics.
Yeah.
As opposed to just what I do, which is really just focus on like one thing at a time. So
yeah, it can be very random. I came up with the CLZ shake idea just because I've seen that on the CLZ Facebook page.
Yeah.
Folks will do it online and they'll talk about it on their posts. And I brought it up to Scott, but Scott came up with the idea for the first 5, which I really like that.
Yeah.
That might be my favorite.
That is a really good, that's a really good approach to talking about comics too. So yeah, I really like it. And of course you came out in the last year, I want to say.
It was about a year and a half was the first episode was up, put out there to the world at large.
Yeah. And this is Mike's Comic Shop Roadshow.
Yes.
Yeah, where Mike goes because you have a job where you travel a lot to different locations, and you decided to visit the comic book shops that were in that area where you're at. You interview the shop owner, or at least people who work in the shop, depending. Mm-hmm. And then you have them recommend a comic that you then go and review with people, which is what you did with me, where we talked about, and I forget if you number your episodes or anything like that, Mike, but
I want to say it was episode, well, I have my little cheat sheet here. It was episode 7. The lucky number 7.
That's what I was thinking. Okay, great. Yeah, that's where we discussed the great Archie Goodwin and Walt Simonson Manhunter backups in Detective Comics in the mid 70s, late 70s. I forget now.
Yeah, the originals I think were in the mid 70s. Yeah, it was Archie Goodwin. I keep thinking of him as an early to mid 70s person at DC. After that, I think he was at Marvel.
I think that's true. All right. Yes. Yeah, so I'm very pleased. I mean, I was honored that you asked me to come onto your show to talk about that great series, because that's always been one of my favorite kind of weird standalone comic books that's in my collection, and it just gave me an opportunity to talk about that. So I really appreciate that.
Oh no, thank you. I was like I said, you were the first real don't be embarrassed by me saying celebrity guests. I mean, I had some of my local friends on before that, but you were like, oh my gosh, this guy I just kind of met through the internet. And I've known him from podcasting, listening to his show and in all of its variations, but he's willing to come on and review a comic with me. So yeah, I really appreciate that.
Well, I tell you what, we will after this. So, we're just going to have, so the folks know, we're going to have this light conversation talking about comic books, talking about podcasting about comic books, and a little bit of surprise for Mike later on in the show. But then eventually, Mike, I would love to have you come onto my show and we can talk about, I could reciprocate with you and we can talk about some actual comic books that we've read and want to review. So I'm looking forward to that. Just got to schedule it. That's the thing.
Yeah.
It's just time. It's all, that's kind of our Achilles heel as comic book readers and podcasters and reviewers is that, we just need the time.
We overestimate the time that we have to do everything that we want to do.
Yeah. And I'm, I'm not getting any younger. So time is precious to me.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I heard somebody talk about in the last few months about, the DC movies talking about a 10-year plan. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they better.
I know, right?
The person that said it, they were like, oh my gosh, I got to get, they better come out with it pretty quick because I got so much, I'm on a similar timeline.
Yeah, oh boy, this conversation took a bit of a dark turn there.
I know. But... Yeah, and you had an episode a while back that you were kind of like talking about legacy, your podcasting legacy, and I don't know if I had my podcast yet, my own, but it did make me think about how, it is kind of like melancholy in a way, but it's also kind of neat. But
yeah,
anyway.
All right, shall we get to it? Let's explore your comic book history, if you don't mind.
Yes.
So, and of course, you don't have to say how old you are, but how how long have you been reading comic books?
Since, I was I'm not one of these people that like remembers the first comic I read or exactly how old I was, but I estimate it was 73 or 74.
Okay. Ahead of me.
Yeah, I was and I'll get to that, but it's because I had access to a lot of those Richie Rich and Archies at a very early age. So not much, not much after I was able to actually read on my own did I get exposed to comic books and found that to be just magical.
Yeah. I too, like you, I read I remember reading a lot of Archie and related stuff. But it was, I always considered my true comic book origin story to be when I bought my first issues that I love to this day, and then continued on with that, continuing to buy my own comic books as opposed to reading my cousins' comic books at their house, which was the Archies and whatnot. So
yeah, it is like a coming of age, isn't it? When you have your own somewhat of a income, whether it's allowance or grass mowing money. And I remember my first Mile High Comics mail order purchase. And thinking about how these comics being $3 and $4 a piece were just crazily high, and I remember like I said, I don't remember the first comic I read, but I do remember some key comics over the years, exactly where I got them and how I got them, just because they were that impactful. Yeah.
Give me an example.
Well, I was probably it was in the later 70s, like 78 or 79, whenever I would have been 12 or so. And I discovered Mile High Comics. And, of course, you had the other ones, the other ads in comics that had like Robert Bell and Howard Rogowski, I think was his name. I never sent off for a list from them, but Mile High seemed like a really big deal. So I sent off for their list. And my biggest goal was I was an early collector of Justice League of America, that first volume.
Okay.
And I thought I want to buy as many of these as I can. And I bought the first purchase I bought for a reasonable amount was number 100.
Ooh.
Yeah. So it was the Seven Soldiers of Victory.
Oh, yes.
They were like the third group with the JLA and JSA crossover.
Oh, yeah. I read that in reprints
Yeah.
at some point, four and a half decades ago. But yeah, I love that story. I've been meaning to revisit that at some point. Oh, maybe we could do that one, Mike.
Oh, that'd be great. I mean, I see the cover, where they've got, I believe it was, well, they're standing over a grave on the cover, and you've got the Justice League on one side of the grave and the Justice Society on the other side. And in the background are the sort of ethereal images of the Seven Soldiers of Victory.
Mm-hmm.
And basically the question was, who was the eighth soldier of victory?
Yes,
And you
yes.
so enticing. I mean, so enticing. And yeah, but anyway, that one burns it's branded in my brain.
Yeah, yeah. Isn't that funny? I don't know about you, but as I'm getting older, I'm having trouble remembering what I had for lunch last week. But I can remember in 1979, 78 or 79, where I was when I bought that issue. When I take a look at that issue in my collection, or I'm looking at my database, my comic collector database of issues, and I happen to spy one from that time period. It's like, oh, I bought it at this convenience store, or whatever. And it's just it's amazing how those things that in your youth like that had, especially with for us with comic books, have such an impact on our long-term memory.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I that's what I like about your comic book history format of those episodes you put out.
Mm-hmm.
Is that I mean, which I think we've talked earlier off air about, I listen a lot of times when I'm working in yard or driving when I can't take notes.
Of course,
And
yeah.
and I'm like, I mean, I have been known to stop and type some notes in my phone and start the lawnmower back up and keep going. And my wife's wondering why it takes me 5 hours to.
That's a great idea. I should do that. I do the same thing when I'm out mowing the lawn for an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending. I'm listening to podcasts.
Yeah.
And I should do that too.
Yeah, it took me. I even remember. I remember listening to an episode. I it was I think it might have been the Legion Project, because it had something to do with the time trapper. And I thought Peter was talking about different appearances. He basically did one of those deep dives of all the time trapper appearances. So it may not have been on the Legion Project. It may have been on his own Daily Rios or something.
No, I think we did. I think we did that on Legion Project.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember him doing in-depth stuff. Maybe it was in regards to Legionnaires 3. It doesn't matter. But yes, right, yeah. But yeah, I remember that. Yeah. So you were taking notes on that or something?
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to read every appearance of the time trapper, and but then I needed to make notes and I was going to do feedback or whatever. And I don't know if I did or not. All I know is that I'm getting off track here, but when I listen, in this case, I was listening to your most recent comic history that came out in May, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And I told you already that Justice League was my jam. That was my favorite comic book. And you were talking about Justice League. I think it was 167.
I think it was 168. Yeah.
Yeah. So the one where they're standing, and I remembered that's another one that I don't remember where I got it. I was probably buying this at the grocery store or the drugstore at the time, but I remember that story arc I was so captured by it. And I think you maybe mentioned this on that episode that Brad Meltzer used this as part of the inspiration for Identity Crisis, right? Is that correct?
I think there's a direct tie. Yeah.
Or tie to it somehow. Yeah.
I don't. I have no idea if he.
Well, it's the whole
how much he took from that, but
yeah. Anyway, that's yeah. So I've been waiting to finish that episode so I could write you about it. So consider this the live feedback session.
Okay.
But I loved it. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, that's been fun doing those history episodes. But speaking of history, so Was there a particular issue, or was it just like you said before, you were reading Archie and whatnot, and then eventually you saw the Mile High thing and you ordered some Justice League, or can you I guess generally what interested you about comic books? Why did you decide to get into comic books? What was it about them that made you pick them up and read them and then continue to read them?
Right. Well, I put simply, I had a leg up on most people because that big gap between me reading whenever I was 6 or 7 or 8 years old, and then whenever I was 12 or 13 and I was able to buy my own back issues, I have an uncle, or had an uncle, that worked at what we called Sparta Printing, but it was the World Color Press, where all comic books in North America were printed for a
Oh
few decades.
my God, yes, I remember reading that in the comics.
And look in the indicia, and you'll
Yeah.
see printed in Sparta, Illinois, which is 20 miles from where I live.
Oh my God, that is
So
amazing.
I had an embarrassment of treasures that would arrive at my grandmother's every couple of months, and I guess he somehow intuitively knew that it was time to graduate from Richie Rich and Archie's, and I started getting some of those Superman and World's Finest and those kinds of comics. And then I was a lost cause. I was
Mm-hmm.
I was in for good. And I never thought to ask my uncle if why there were no Marvel comics in these stacks, but my suspicion is my cousin maybe got to pick through them first, and he must have liked maybe the Marvel characters. I don't know,
Uh,
but so I ended up, that's why I became such a DC fan. I just didn't have any exposure to the Marvel books. And yeah.
I recall from conversations that you've had on Campus Comics Cast that you seem to be and were identified as such, being a DC fan,
Hmm.
primarily a DC fan, and I was curious if that was just because you liked the characters or just for some reason you gravitated towards that. But it seems like that you were given these books, and that's what prompted you to go down that. So when did you start reading any Marvel books around that time, or did it take even longer?
Probably whenever, let's see, I graduated high school again. I'm not worried about people will figure out my age, but I graduated high school in 1984. And I, when I started whenever I started going to, well, that was about the time that Secret Wars came out. That was my first Marvel book
Oh
that I
wow,
picked up.
wow! You
And
jumped into a big one.
right, yeah. And I mean, I didn't know the characters, perfectly. Everybody knew who the big ones were, your Captain Americas and your Spider-Man and Thor and Hulk and things like that. And to be honest, I had read some of the big Treasury Edition crossovers, like Superman and Spider-Man and
Oh
Batman and
yeah.
things like that, because sometimes that was really a big day when my uncle would bring us a Treasury edition. I say us because my brother had equal access, but he chose to just stick with the Richie Riches for the rest of his life. I'm like, great.
Lucky you.
But that's when yeah, yes. But that's how that was whenever I made a conscious decision to try to learn more about Marvel comics. Although I stayed about 80% DC throughout until recent years, and now I'm really playing a lot of catch up with the Marvel books.
Well, and I hear when you guys do the previews episode, you all talk a lot about more, Image or other independent books as well.
Mhm.
But it seems like Scott's always making comments about, okay, I assume that you're going to talk about this, Mike, because it's a DC thing.
Yeah, yeah. He it's pretty predictable. We know each other well enough. We earmark things in the previews catalog that whether Scott knows that me or Shad are going to maybe talk about, or vice versa. But we know each other's tastes and things, and it's kind of neat that way because usually we're right.
So, okay, so you were given a number of comics. Was it a lot? Was it what did you get, like was it once a month, or Was it every week, or that you got these books from?
So it was probably through the winter. You might get every couple months, but he would bring an extra large stack to my grandma right before we would go camping for the summer. So we live in Southern Illinois, and our big, I mean, coming from, in a big family. I'm one of seven kids, the oldest of seven kids. So I was kind of like John Boy and the Waltons. And my idea of getting away was just give me some comics and I'll go hide in the
Ah,
barn and
yeah.
try to read. But in the summer, my parents continued to work, but the oldest of us kids, we would go with our grandma down to Current River in southeast Missouri, there's a lot of camping areas and it's very clear water, rock bottom. It's beautiful for camping and canoeing. So we had a campground there that we rented all the property, a couple of acres, and it was not like a public campground. It was a private one. So it was beautiful. And I would literally just spend, I'd get that extra big stack of comics that my uncle would leave with my grandma, and I would just pour through them all summer long. I mean, it wasn't just for a week or two. I was there maybe 6 weeks, usually right after Little League baseball ended in June. The rest of the summer, we were down in around Current River in Missouri.
Wow. Hey, everybody. If you like all this comic book talk with Mike, then I wanted to let you know that my friend George from Meanwhile at the Podcast also talked to Mike about more comic book goodness, as well as Mike's career and his extensive travels. So if you want to hear a little bit more about Mike and what he is up to, then you can go to Meanwhile at the Podcast and search for that episode. I'll have a link in the show notes. Back to the show. Okay, so I guess, Mike, from that, what I'm curious about is, so you had these comics, you were given all these comics that you could pour over the summer, which sounds like heaven to me because I didn't have that opportunity. I would get like one or two comics maybe a month at any one time, so it was just they were precious to me. Not that they weren't for you, but it was just a different situation. But did you keep all those? Was that the start of your collection of comics?
Yeah, that was, I guess that bug in me was tickled at the same time to be a collector. I remember I had an aunt on the other side of the family that wanted to get me into collecting stamps, and I was like, this is boring.
My grandmother tried to do the same thing with me.
I mean, God bless her, she was trying to, get me something that might be interesting. But yeah, I didn't know I was really, it was literally, I had a little desk in my room that I shared with two brothers, my desk for homework, and there were some shelves on the side that maybe were 2 foot tall on the side, 3 foot tall. And I basically just stacked them, and every 10 or so, I would rotate so they wouldn't curl. But that was the way I stored them for then, that many, until I had to figure out a different storage situation. And of course, I'm sure you've heard of Bob Rozakis, the Answer Man. The Answer Man.
I have one of his books, actually. One of his Answer Man books.
Oh, really? Oh my gosh. I didn't even know there was such a thing.
Yeah.
It's like reprints all of the columns?
Not those columns, but he had something he did, I believe, on AOL when they first started that up, and they had a weekly, I think, session where he would get on and answer trivia and whatnot.
Oh, that's neat.
It's been fun to read through that.
Yeah, I need to touch base with you on that. Get a copy. But so it's at some point someone asked him about what's the best way to store comics. No one my age, at least, ever heard of bags and boards. I don't know when they were even invented, but he said the best way he recommended was taking a freezer bag, just a plastic freezer bag, not a Ziploc, but they call it a freezer bag. I don't know if you can even still buy them, but you could fit 12 to 15 comics in the bag, in each bag, and then you would just basically fold in the excess plastic, and that would keep them moisture free. And I basically, now this is a testament to my mom and her, and I don't know where in my reading career this came in, but as tight as the space was in our home, it was a 3-bedroom home for 9 people, but the end of the hallway was our linen closet. She allocated 3 of the shelves for my comics and basically allowed me to take over most of that closet to put all of those freezer bag packed comics, book style on, on edge or whatever. Yeah, God love her. That she was always she was had been an English teacher at some point, and she was glad that I was reading so much, and she wanted to encourage, I guess. But I was later on in life, I'm like, wow, would I even do that for my own kid?
I think you would. I think you would.
Yeah, probably.
That is amazing that she did that for you.
Yeah.
That's great. Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so you started your collection. So that means you must have quite a few issues in your collection. Do you mind saying how many you have?
No, not at all. It's at this point I have 12,830, and that's because I can tell you that exact amount because I've got the CLZ app.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Isn't that a great tool for comic?
Yeah.
And they, of course they do. This is not an advertisement, but they have other they have other apps where for books and records and I don't know what else, but
movies or whatever physical media. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I did sell a big portion of my collection at one point back in, I guess it had to be early 1990, because my wife and I got married in October of 1990, and I sold about 500 books to a shop. And this is when it probably was a third of my collection, at least, maybe a half of it. And I sold it to the shop. And that was where I think that's when my original Watchmen run, I sold a lot of Alan Moore Swamp Thing. And I'm like, oh, but I did that so I could afford to purchase or at least put toward an engagement ring. So,
oh, okay. Well,
yeah.
You get a clear pass for that indiscretion, Mike. Given given the importance of it, yeah.
It did buy me some understanding from my wife in later years. So
yeah. That's good. That's good. Wow. I don't think I'm going to tell my wife that story because yeah. I've never sold my books to pay for something for us.
Yeah.
And now I feel really selfish.
It was something I just had to do because I literally at that point couldn't afford really everything that we wanted to do with the wedding coming up. But it was well worth it. And
that was a very gentlemanly thing for you to do. That's great.
But then wait, I got to show you now. Here's the flip side. Because of that, I can do things like buy this.
Oh my gosh.
This kind of thing doesn't happen very often, but I had the opportunity to buy, I would say, what is a 3.0, 3.5 copy of Flash 123, which is the introduction, even though it wasn't named Earth 2, but it was the introduction of the Golden Age DC heroes as being on a parallel Earth to the Silver Age DC heroes, Earth 1 and Earth 2.
The multiverse begins in 1956.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Nice.
Well, that wouldn't have been fit. That was that was when Barry Allen, I guess you could say that was the great beginning of the multiverse, but it wasn't coined that until
right.
This
yeah.
Yeah. But that doesn't happen very often. But I had this opportunity and I got it very reasonably. So it's
that's one of those issues where I wouldn't mind getting a nice copy of that one. Just those formidable key, I guess key is the proper term, but those key comics, and not just because it's a key comic, because it's it is important, at least in for we DC Comics fans, because of the whole Earth 1, Earth 2, and reintroducing the Golden Age characters into continuity during the Silver Age, and it's been homaged several times on covers and probably in other stories. It's just a very important issue. And so, things like that, I think are good investments. So that's awesome.
I remember, literally the price I got it for was just, I couldn't pass it up, because I remember seeing this book at Mile High Comics back in 2012 when I was out in Boulder for some training, and Mile High, was in Denver, so I took the train or whatever and got in there, and that was and it was like, we're talking 5 digits for a copy of this.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
and it must have been a high grade, but this was low 3 digits, so you can say that's. But anyway, that's it. Yeah, that's how I got, that bought me all of the stuff in the past gave me some good karma in the future.
Good. Yeah. Yeah. Be careful how you spend that
Yes.
karma.
Right.
All right. So you showed off that Flash comic. Is Flash one of would you say is a favorite character of yours, or?
I'd say of the Justice Leaguers, he was one of the favorite characters. He's in that top tier. I love that he wasn't I love the way Carmine Infantino drew him. He was slight in stature. I mean, his power was speed. He didn't need to be big, bulky, muscular, and I did really take to him. But I loved his dynamic and his relationship with Ralph Dibny, the Elongated Man, and that's my favorite character of all time is Elongated Man.
Oh,
yeah,
I did not know that.
Yeah, if I may, I know this is an audio format, but a friend of mine had this made for me.
Oh my gosh.
It's a flask, but it's got the word, and I've never, to this day, I don't know the right way to pronounce it, Gingold or Gingold.
I've always pronounced it Gingold.
Okay, I'm gonna go with you.
It is spelled Gingold, so maybe.
But and it even says soda water on it, but everybody knows that he's my favorite, and especially, the Bronze Age, design with the black and red and all that.
So. Yeah, very cool. Okay, so give me what are your top 5 favorite comic book characters?
Okay, and I have to be diverse here because when it comes to the companies, I'm not. Otherwise I'd be like all DC. So Elongated Man and Green Arrow, probably the top 2. Because Green Arrow's, he was the first. DC's always had the rap, probably deservedly so, for having very sort of, especially in the Gardner Fox era of writing Justice League, the dialogue was somewhat stale in that you could interchange, the dialogue with different characters and no one would know any difference. But when people like Denny O'Neil, started writing Green Arrow and of course Green Lantern, but he and Neil Adams gave Green Arrow that sort of social justice warrior.
Yeah.
And he's also very, hot-headed, and he's got emotions, and he's fallible, and he ticks off Dinah, Black Canary, and has to make up, and then seeing him argue with Hawkman it just made to me I just loved everything about Green Arrow too. So
yeah,
and I really didn't talk much about Ralph Dibny, but I loved his relationship. I love the fact that there was a married couple in the Justice League. Basically, Sue was an honorary member because she was there all the time, and they were inseparable, really. And he never really worried about the secret his secret identity. His human, I guess, character, if you want to call it a flaw, was that he had a big ego and he loved the notoriety. So he was like Booster Gold before there was Booster Gold.
Good point. Yeah, I haven't thought about it like that, but that totally makes sense.
Yeah, and he wasn't trying to make money, but he just liked the celebrity status.
Yeah.
But then I guess I want to give, as far as like a off-brand maybe, or just a golden age, I loved Wildcat. I've loved Wildcat as a golden age character for years.
Oh no, we're gonna have to part ways on that one, Mike. I'm sorry to say.
Okay. Okay. Well, let me ask you then. What's your take on Wildcat? I mean, I know what your take is, but why?
I don't know. I just never cared for the character, and I'm sorry. He seems really one note to me.
Yeah. I think maybe what I'm thinking of is with Wildcat, and I was trying to pick a Golden Age character, but it's not that I liked all those old Golden Age stories, but I liked him in later years where he became sort of the mentor of the younger Justice Society members, with like Power Girl and people like that. So, but anyway, it was like the Jeff Johns Wildcat. So I'll qualify that a bit. But on the Marvel side, I've always well, if I got to stick to two of them, probably going to say Daredevil.
Good choice. My
Yep. I
favorite.
mean, just intriguing type of character, sort of all this juxtaposition of his role as as an attorney and as a vigilante,
Mm-hmm.
and just the visuals of him and different runs, over the years, the Miller runs and different, just one of the best characters ever. And She-Hulk, I really love Jen Walters. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So that's five.
That's a character I've not actually read a lot of. And I know that like currently there's was it Rainbow Rowell? Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the right pronunciation? All I hear is how good that run of She-Hulk is right now. So
Yeah.
I need to dive into the Marvel Universe app and read more of those.
Yeah. I remember getting that was one of the first Marvel books I got too, was her first issue.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So that was I think that was late 70s as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, I believe so.
So that actually predates Secret Wars. So I know I got that when it came on the shelf, and I think what sold it was I mean, she's a big green Buxomus superhero heroine. So I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
12-year-old me is like,
Sure.
yeah, I think I need to pick this up.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly when that came out, but I want to say 77, 78, maybe even 79. I don't know, but I know that I'm pretty sure that Stan Lee wanted to get a She-Hulk character copyrighted before somebody else did something similar.
Oh, right.
And I have this feeling, this vague recollection that it was around the time of the Hulk TV series, which I think was around 78.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of that, I'm curious. Did you, because you and I are about the same age. You're slightly older than I am. So, did you watch the Incredible Hulk TV series?
Yep, I sure did.
Yeah. Did you watch the Captain America, those really horrible Captain America specials?
Yes. I was a loyal fan of the
Yeah.
Shazam ISIS power.
Oh, that too.
Whatever.
Yep.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I did watch all those. Yeah.
The Amazing Spider-Man live action television series.
I didn't watch any of those.
Really?
I don't know why. I mean, I really can't tell you why. I don't know if I had only a certain amount of hours a
Mhm.
morning that I could watch things before we had to do stuff. Like on the weekends, like I said, big family, we used to have to work in the garden and do things. And I just maybe only had a couple hours that I could watch certain things. You certainly couldn't DVR things or
No, yeah.
put a tape in back then even.
That's right. That's right. If you missed it, you were lucky to catch it in reruns. Maybe.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, great. All right. Before we transition to talking a little bit more about the podcast stuff, what are some of the favorite things of yours that you're reading right now?
Well, it's an indicator of my amount of time I have available, but I had to think harder. I have to think harder about this one, but the Wonder Woman run by Tom King is something I'm staying up with every issue. I don't get behind on it. I don't know if you've heard of Traveling to Mars by Mark Russell.
I am waiting for the trade to be printed and shipped to me.
Yes, it's wonderful. It's really good. Now the last issue, I don't think I've gotten the last issue of it. It was delayed. And I think I've only gotten to issue 11. So all I know is I read a lot of Mark Russell, but I even beyond his other stuff, I really enjoyed this.
It sounded very interesting to me for sure.
Yeah, it's very. I mean, he tinges a lot of his writing with some darkness and choices that have to be made, and it's not overwhelming, but it is like interesting to it's just an interesting perspective by the protagonist in the story. I definitely recommend reading it. Two of the other ones I've read recently, and one of them is not finished, but I read Superman Space Age. I thought that was fantastic. I know it ended a while back, but the flip side is Batman Dark Age, and it's even better so far.
Mm. Okay, I'll have to check that one out.
Yeah, both of them were told as if the characters were progressing through their life in real time.
Well, speaking of that, did you read the John Byrne, was it Generation, Superman Batman Generation series that he did?
No, I mean, I think I may have read one of them, but it was like the second of the series, and I didn't have all of the issues. So I do have them all now, I think, and I do want to read them. But I've heard these being compared to that,
Yeah.
being,
Well, just in terms of the aging in real time, so to speak, aspect
yeah,
of it. So
yeah.
that was one of the things I enjoyed about those series.
Well, did you read Spider-Man Life Story?
I did. Mm-hmm.
And that's a more recent one that I would compare to these in that it's, Peter Parker progressing through life, and I loved it. And I can't remember who wrote it. Was it Zdarsky?
I believe it was
Yeah.
Zdarsky. Yeah.
Yeah. It was super, but it's a couple years old now too.
Do you read mostly single issue stuff, or mostly trades, or just depending on what it is and how you get it?
I am I am it's so much folly. I buy single issues with the me I mean to read them. I intend to read them, and then I end up reading them on the app a lot of times because I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got how it is. You got basically three different statuses for your collection, right? You've got your just purchased, ready to be read.
Yep.
Your to read boxes, or in my case, boxes, not piles. I've got three short boxes that are to read,
Oh wow.
and then I've got the box or three of to file,
Yep.
and then I've got my other box that is to give away or sell.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do buy, and then I'll have them, and then I'm thinking, well, I'm traveling this week. I'm not going to try to pack a bunch of books with me. If I'm just gonna, I know they're on the app by now,
Mm-hmm.
except for if it's non-Marvel, non-DC, then and I have it, I'm not going to buy it again on Comixology necessarily. I'll bring it with me, but I have, I've used Amazon/Comixology quite a bit. You can get pretty good purchase or buys, but no, it's I don't buy many trades unless it's really the only time I buy a trade is if it's part for the show, for the Roadshow.
Ah, okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I mostly read trade collections now.
Do you?
And
Yeah.
my one of my best friends, Travis, likes to give me a bad time about how I'm ruining the comic book industry by not supporting the single issues.
I well, I love listening to Travis and George, to your like most frequent co-hosts, but um yeah, I think I've heard Travis give you stuff about that before.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing. I mean, I I have bought, if I find a good trade. I just bought the Death of Superman because I didn't know if I had all of those issues together, and I thought, well, I got it for $5. I mean, what the heck? I
Yeah.
might as well.
Yeah. To your point about the reading it on the app, though, I have a rule that like I'm waiting for my shipment from DCBS so I can read the few single issues that I still collect, like Nightwing
Mm-hmm.
or the Batman Superman World's Finest, things like that. I will not read those issues because they actually appear on the app before I get them
Oh, and that's something.
in physical. Yeah. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, come on. But I won't read those on the app because I want, I bought the issue, so I want to make sure I experience it that way.
Right.
But I make use of the Marvel and DC apps.
Yeah. It's so convenient when you're on the run.
Mm-hmm.
You can find them quickly. Now, I will echo what some people have said about how both of the apps can be flawed. It seems like I
Oh
get
yeah.
something downloaded, and then as soon as I get like in the airport or on a plane, and it'll say the license is expired. And I'm like, I just downloaded this 2 days ago. What the heck? Now I gotta undownload it, or whatever you call that, and re-download it, and then it'll be there if I'm lucky enough to catch it before I have to go to airplane mode on the plane.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to convenience, it's helpful to have the apps. But I still do. I mean, I favor, if I weren't working and on the run, I would probably read the physical copies almost exclusively.
Yeah, it's the my preferred format too. But
Yeah.
even though I just bought a Humble bundle, another Humble bundle of Cerebus comics because
Oh, cool.
I've never read Cerebus. So,
Oh, neither have I.
but yeah, that's another set of digital books that I'm gonna have to read some at some point. I see, Mike. What I'm doing is I'm building up the collection so that when I retire, I have all this stuff I can just read. That's what I tell my wife anyway.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Again, I think we are like parallel lives here. Maybe parallel Earth 1 and Earth 2. I don't know, but very similar.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk a bit more about the podcast you're associated with, Campus Comics Cast, and your very own Mike's Comic Shop Roadshow. Remind me, Campus Comics Cast has been around for how long?
Since I believe it was November or maybe September, October of 2017.
Uh-huh. And you were not initially part of it. Is that correct?
I actually was on the very first episode,
Oh, okay.
maybe the second, but we recorded live at the comic shop at Campus Comics. And in November, I moved to Salt Lake City for work. And Scott, we just didn't, he was a little hesitant about trying to do anything online. This is before, COVID and the advent of Zoom and all of these video technology, great things that we have. So I just couldn't take part for quite a while.
Ah,
And when I would happen to come home, for a weekend and they were happening to be recording, I'd join them again, but it was very sporadic. And then when COVID hit, the silver lining for me with COVID is that my company realized they needed to embrace remote work for certain employees, and I was one of them. So I got to move back to Illinois, and I was able, but ironically, by then we didn't even, because you had Zoom and Teams and everything else, we still record over, I think Scott uses Skype.
mm-hmm.
I don't think, I know he uses Skype, but now we can use the video technology. We have only gotten together once or twice, I think, since I've been back, in person.
Yeah, that's been great. From a podcaster's point of view, having these apps, internet apps, where we can connect, like you and I, speaking. You're in the Midwest-ish, and I'm sort of in the Pacific Northwest,
Yeah.
and time difference and all that stuff. And here we are talking and seeing each other, which is
Yes.
even better. So
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. Okay. And then, like you mentioned before, you started Mike's Comic Shop Roadshow. What do you say, about a year and a half ago?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
About that. Mm-hmm.
And do you want to tell the story how you got started on that?
Yeah, actually, I want to say it was the very episode that you mentioned earlier about Peter and I. I appeared on a book club episode with him when we covered the Shadow Hero, and either before or after we were recording, he said, I told him I've been wanting to podcast, like many readers and comics fans, that we all, it seems like, aspired and just couldn't figure out what to do first.
Mm-hmm.
And he came up with the idea. I mean, he just, like we said earlier, he's like an idea factory. And
Yeah.
he says, well, you travel all the time, you go to shops anyway, so why don't you interview the shop owners or the manager or whatever? And I'm like, oh, that's genius. I'm like, wait, I got to take some notes. Wait. So we went back, we ended that recording with him, and I emailed back and forth with him. He helped me come up with some questions to ask. And that was actually in September it was right before I did my Australia trip. So it was August or September of 22. And yeah, so I put together the plan of my basic premise would be interviewing a shop owner, for 10 minutes to whatever it ends up being. And then they recommend a book for me to read and review.
And I have to say, every time Mike, you talk to a new shop owner, it's a great catalog of if you are traveling to wherever this shop happens to be, then everybody needs to look up your episodes to see what the shop is and go visit them because I don't know, either you're very lucky in the people that you interview, or you, I don't know, bring out the best of these folks because they sound so awesome. They're helpful and like they're having a lot of fun, and it just makes me want to go patron their shops because of these interviews that you're doing.
Yes. Well, that's if that's the I know I've been very fortunate because I've had 99% positivity. And I want to, if I am getting bad vibes, even if they agreed and it was a bad vibe, I probably wouldn't even put it out there. Right. So I want to promote physical stores, even if, in this day and age, we can buy digital, we can buy through DCBS, we have all these options, but where there are stores, I like to promote them, the physical stores, because to me, it's a destination and you can meet people there and it's fun. And I do, even if there are some, smudges on their image, I don't highlight it, of course. I
Yeah.
just, but that's not to say, I mean, starting with my own hometown shop, very small, the Muddy Monster Comics, and I've told Mike No, the owner, I'm like, you're my guinea pig, buddy. So I need to practice my interviewing skills with you. And then, then I was like, oh my gosh, I had this trip to Australia and I'm like, I can't miss the opportunity. I was like, I was on fumes as far as I didn't sleep much on the way over there. It's a 15-hour flight. And that very day I told my workmates, I'm like, I've got to go to this shop and this shop. I'm going to get the train. I'll catch up with you guys later.
Oh
So
my gosh.
yeah, but they were very gracious too. And it does mean a lot for me to hear you say that maybe I bring out some, the positive demeanor from some of them, but they're just, I've been very, very lucky to have that experience with them. It's just so joyful. I just get
Yeah,
tingly talking to these folks.
that's exactly it. That's what comes across to me as a listener
Yep.
is the joy of comics.
Yes.
And with you and the owner and between yourselves and just the patrons of the shop, and it's been so much fun because I'm one of those people that really likes trying to understand like the background of things or the behind the scenes type stuff. And just hearing the shop owners talk about their business and how they approach things and whatnot, I just love it. It's a great listen, and of course, I encourage everybody to go subscribe and like and leave those positive reviews about Mike's Comic Shop Roadshow.
Well, thank you. That's good. I'd love to have more listeners, and I know that I've got a few, but it's honestly, I would be disingenuous to say that this was anything other than a vanity or an indulgence project. I wanted to do it because it would be fun. And at the same time, if I can promote these stores, heck yeah. Now, I don't want to drag this out, but I mean, there's been sometimes I've gone and I just didn't have time to really connect with them in advance to say, can we schedule a mutually agreeable time? And I just showed up and they couldn't necessarily do the full interview, but I said, well, can you recommend a book to me? So I'm going to start reviewing those. I have one recorded now, but it's called Pit Stop, a Roadshow Pit Stop. And I'm going to not do an interview because we couldn't do an interview. But they did recommend a book because, like I said, I want to support the store. And the last, this first one of that nature, I recorded with Shad, and it'll be out, I don't know, hopefully in a couple weeks. So
All right. Yes, that's right. I remember you telling me about that. You were going to do the pit stop. The another. What I like to call them because I do that too. Is like different things. I call them imprints on my own feed.
yeah.
So that's great. I can't wait to listen to those.
And Eric, I believe that you are slated for one of them here. I don't want to spoil anything, but I've got your name down for one of those pit stops.
I am so looking forward to that. Yes.
According to the latest report from falsifiedstats.com, 2.3 million new comic book podcasts are being created every single day. If you're looking for something a little different, then let me tell you about Mike's Comic Shop Roadshow. Mike travels the globe and visits comic shops along the way, like Murfreesboro, Illinois, and Liverpool, New South Wales, Australia. So check out Mike's Comic Shop Roadshow, a truly unique comic book podcast among billions of the same old, same old.
Okay, Mike. So I remind us, how many episodes of the Comic Shop Roadshow have you released so far?
I have released 19, and the 20th will be probably out in the next week or so.
And so we're recording this at the end of June. So your episode will come out before this one. I can tell you that already.
Okay.
But as people listen to this, that means they have at least 20, maybe even more than that, to go back and listen to if they haven't yet. And you mentioned Australia. I know you went to England as well, and I did some at least one shop there, right?
Actually, I did 4, but
Four?
I mean, yeah. Actually,
Okay.
4.
Okay. So, and I know obviously you've visited other locations in the United States. Is there any other foreign location that you have done this so far?
No, I mean, it's still the U.S., of course, but Hawaii was the farthest I think I've been in the U.S., and it was one of my favorite interviews as well. It's out already. Yeah, Other
Yeah, I was
Realms.
going to ask you what were some of your favorites, and that was a really good one. I agree.
It was so cool to see. It was a family operation that was so successful. They were very. I had a hard time because they were so busy. I didn't know if they were like a little bit hesitant to say come on in, but once we got going, it was phenomenal. And what's her name? Loretta, I believe. Yeah, Charles and Loretta. She's basically the business mind behind it all. And Charles was more of the comic fan, but he was the promoter and but seeing how they operate, they had several employees and it was so busy. You could hear it in the recording, but it was such a great one to do. I had so much fun.
Well, if my wife and I ever make it back to Hawaii, I'm gonna have to tell her I got to go here. But she's used to that. Whenever we travel, I quite often say, okay, I'm gonna find some comic shops to go to, and she is very gracious and allows me to do that.
That's cool.
on our travels. So, okay. So, are there any before we get out of this and move on to the next topic? Are there any interviews, any particular comic shops that you've not interviewed at that are like your white whales, or you'd really like to do this, have this conversation with that particular comic shop?
Well, because I don't I tend to travel to mostly the same locations for work, but it's not like I can do much forward research, like where should I try to strategically plan my travel.
But if you had the opportunity, say,
well, yeah. So I obviously, if I was lucky enough to do one of those big ones like Midtown Comics or something, that would be like a chef's kiss type thing. You would be just they're Graham Cracker Comics in Chicago. They have several locations, and I used to shop at the one in Joliet. So if I ever get that way, I know I can fit. I'm sure they would get me in, and they've got a couple shops I've been to actually up there, Naperville and Joliet, or Plainfield, maybe it's called is the city. But I believe it or not, I'm going back to the UK.
Oh wow.
It's bittersweet because it's like I love the people over there that I worked with, but it's like my wife and I have to strategize a bit to work around some things. But I do want to go to a place called Mega City Comics in London. It was one place I couldn't get in, and so that's one of my to-do lists, or on my big to-do list. And then I was recently in El Paso, and for the life of me, I tried to get a hold of 4 different shops, and I couldn't get in. I couldn't. It just didn't work out. But the one that sounded the coolest was Major Comics, and the owner just happened to be at a show or a con, or he was not available, and the employee just didn't feel comfortable. But they sounded really excited, so it's called Major Comics in El Paso. So that's the best I can come up with, other than like the big names, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you have to let me know if you're ever in like Portland, Oregon, or the Seattle, Washington area, you know, because that's the big metropolitan places that I get to go to. And I might have to make a little day trip if you're around and available.
If you're in the tri-state area in the Northwest, if I'm in the tri-state area, I'm probably going to say, Eric, I'm within 100 miles or 200 miles in case you want to meet up. But I know obviously if I get up that way, I would definitely reach out.
Okay, excellent. All right. Like I said before, everybody it should definitely go listen to Mike's Comic Shop Roadshow and the upcoming Pit Stop. Pit Stops? Mm-hmm. Pit Stop? Is that?
I've bounced around on the actual phrase, Roadshow Pit Stop.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just kind of, I thought, well, you got to try to stick with the theme here. It's like, taking a break to go get a soda, at a restaurant or something. It's a pit stop. It's a break from the regular routine. Yeah.
Yep, I think that's an excellent name for it. All right, and of course, Campus Comics Cast, where you get to talk with Scott and Shad, and I really like you guys talking comics, and so
I love those guys. I mean, it's just kind of like reiterating the camaraderie that comes with sharing a passion like we do with comics,
mm-hmm.
and knowing that we all have different personalities and different variations of the interest and can tap into that. It's been so cool. So,
mm-hmm. Well, speaking of Campus Comics Cast, Mike, I have a little surprise for you, as I hinted at earlier. I'm taking a page out of the CCC episode book, and I have a bunch of comic book trivia I want to throw your way, if you don't mind.
I don't mind at all. I don't mind falling on my face. Of course not.
Well, I tried to get a nice collection of DC, Marvel, and I guess I only have one independent. but I thought maybe you would. These are things given what I know about you. These are things that you probably are aware of. So
okay, it's not going to be like the comic version of the Newlywed Game where I have to tell you what Scott's favorite of this is and Shad's favorite of that is, right? Okay.
No. So, just so people know, on Campus Comics Cast, the guys use a particular trivia book, which thanks to Mike reminding me of what it was, I bought that myself, and then when I was looking, I thought. When I was looking for that and going to purchase, I thought, well, I wonder what other trivia comic books are available at. I got this at mycomicshop.com.
Mm-hmm.
And I found one, Mike. It's called the Silver Wolf Comic Book Trivia Comic Book. Have you ever heard of this?
No, I have not.
I was going to say, when did this come out? But I don't know. Anyway, I think it was around the early to mid 80s. I want to say, just based on the particular questions they're asking. Anyway, so they have 6 categories in this comic book for trivia, and so I chose one trivia point per category. And so here we go.
Kind of like Trivial Pursuit, then. You got
kind of, yeah,
little pie pieces, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Let's see how many comic book corner boxes you get, Mike.
Right.
I don't know. Anyway, this is the character in question. And the question is, what type of... You should get this one, Mike. I'm just going to preface this right now. What type of dagger did the third Manhunter use?
Okay. Now, we talked about this, and when we recorded, and I am... Oh, no. Forget it, because I'm mixing it up with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle dagger. That's not it. but I know what it is. It's, at least I can give you some of the letters in the name. Is it I don't know how to pronounce it, like Katar? Katar? Or is it?
The answer in the Silver Wolf comic book trivia comic book is a Bundy dagger.
Oh, yeah, that was way off from anything I was thinking. I was thinking of something that maybe I'm just mixing it up with Katar Hall, Hawkman having is it the dagger that he had like held it in a fist and it was kind of a wide blade?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a very similar, if not the same dagger now that you mention it.
Yeah, I think another name was maybe for it was because I remember making that correlation between Katar Hall, Hawkman, and but Bundy I think was but hey.
Anyway. All right. Next topic category: conflicts and antagonists. All right. Which villain group was responsible for the death of Vindicator in that John Byrne Alpha Flight series?
I have to throw myself at the court's mercy because I haven't read any Alpha Flight.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I apologize. I thought
No,
for sure that you might have read that.
So, yeah, I mean, I could take a guess, but I really don't. It was like, say the question again?
Which villain group was responsible for the death of Vindicator? And I could give you a hint if you'd like.
I'm trying to think of a villain group that maybe the Alpha Flight would have fought. And the Sinister Six? I don't know.
No.
No, okay.
If you it's a 2-word villain group, and the second word is flight.
Omega Flight?
Yes, there you go. Very good.
The opposite? Okay.
That's very good for not having read Alpha Flight. So,
Yeah.
All right. Next up is issues in specific. In what issue did the new Teen Titans first appear?
Oh, DC Comics Presents number 26.
Ding, ding, ding. There you go. Good
Green
job.
Lantern was the headliner with Superman. Yeah,
That's right. Yes, I love that issue.
Jim Starlin art. Yeah, I remember that. I do too. Yeah.
All right, another DC question for you. From artists and writers, who drew the cover for DC's Star Trek #1? And there is I'll let you ponder that for a second before I give you the clue.
You know, I have it in my mind that George Perez drew a couple of issues. So yeah,
that is George Perez. I was going to say it has a relation to New Teen Titans. So.
Yes.
Okay. Companies in general is the category. Who first published the Badger comics? Are you familiar with that character?
Yes.
Okay.
It was, one of those early, one of those 80s independent publishers.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it will be somewhat of a guess, but I want to say even Mike Barron was the writer, wasn't he? Or did he create the Badger?
Yes, that is what I would say too.
So I'm thinking it's Eclipse Comics.
Close. First Comics.
First. Darn it.
Yeah, it's always going to be Eclipse, Pacific, or First, right? Around that early 80s, right?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I had a 1 in 3 chance.
All right. Final question, Mike. On with the bad guys is the category.
Oh.
And the question is, in which issue did Dr. Doom first appear?
Fantastic Four.
Didn't on
we covered this it's in the first 5.
First 5, yeah.
It's in the first 5. So I'm gonna.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
It's got to be 3 or 4. I'm gonna say 3.
Is actually 5.
5. Oh, dang it.
Okay. At least according to the Silver Wolf.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, that's
comic book trivia comic book.
Yeah. 5 makes more sense because he appeared so frequently in Fantastic Four after that. So I think it might have been a 2-issue arc, even if I don't know if he carried over into issue 6 or not. So, oh well, I didn't even bat 500, did I? Doggone.
Still, all good, all good. I don't know that I would have gotten all those myself. So,
It's everything's so squishy after time, you
Oh
know.
yeah. I went to a somewhat local Comic-Con like 15 years ago, and they had a trivia contest, and they would ask the question, and I'd be like, I know this, and then I couldn't answer it quickly enough because these
Yeah.
younger people, even 15 years ago, apparently I was one of the older folks in the room, but there was these younger people who just seemed to have this instant recollection of this trivia.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my God, I can't even come up with a number, this issue number or that character name or whatever before these young whippersnappers beat me to it.
Oh, it's like watching Fastest Finger on the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. You
Oh
know,
right, yeah.
we would play along at home and try to, see who could answer it first. But I always failed. I just need enough. I'm like Batman. If you give me enough time, I'll figure it out. But I'm not the quick draw McGraw at all.
Yeah. That's great. All right. Well, Mike, thank you for being such a good sport on that
Oh, that was fun. That's fun.
unprompted bit of trivia. This and just so people know, I did not tell Mike I was doing this at all. I did warn him I was going to do something, but I did not tell him it was going to be a bunch of
I'm
trivia.
glad you didn't, because I'd have been sweating it. It's best not to know. But that was fun. Thank you.
Okay, good. Hopefully that didn't turn you off on coming back on the show.
No, heck no. And I'm going to get that. I'm going to get that book too, because we need a sequel to, was it called Blood Moon Comics, that trivia book? So
Mhm.
that one you just showed me, I'm definitely going to get. And it's more in my wheelhouse because it's a lot of older stuff. So
Yeah. And by the way, there is a second issue of this.
Okay.
But my comic shop didn't have it. So
Okay.
if you're out in the wild and you spot it, you should definitely grab it because it appears to be pretty scarce.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool.
Mike, thank you so much for joining me today and talking about your comics history and your comic book podcasts and enduring the trivia. It's just so great to talk to a fellow comic book lover generally, but like I said, you and I are about the same age. I too have thought about you as like when I listen to you talk about comics and stuff. It's like we have a similar way of thinking about things or similar interests in various companies or titles or characters, and so
Right.
I've been looking forward to talking to you for quite a while, and this was so much fun.
Yeah. Well, and I have to add to that. I think we have similar values, both comics and family. So I love that about your podcast and just hearing about your In Your Gutters episode and stuff like that. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. If people were wanting to reach out to you, either just to say hi or to ask you any questions about what you do in terms of podcasting and whatnot, or even if there's a comic shop out there who happens to listen to the show, get a hold of you and say, hey, come to my shop.
Yeah.
How can they get a hold of you?
Well, I just recently started for a long time. I've been using my personal home email, and I've had I have the Comic Shop Roadshow domain. So I don't know why I've never really used this, but Scott brought it up, and I'm like, yeah, I should really use that. And so I'm going to put it out there on your show first, Eric, that if the first person that sends me an email to Mike at comicshoproadshow.com, all one word, comicshoproadshow.com, you send me an email and you tell me hello, hi, go jump on a lake, I don't care what, I will send you a Bronze Age comic, and it won't be just a piddly one. It'd be something worth saying, oh, this is cool. Hopefully.
Well, and make sure, because I'm not sure when this will come out. I'm going to guess you might be using that or telling people to use that email address before this episode is released, Mike. Make sure they mention that you heard this on the Long Box Review comic book podcast, and that way Mike will know that that's what this is for, and then he can send that out to you. So thank you for doing that. That's really kind of you to do.
I remember you doing that once with on a contest on the Legion project. So I thought about doing it. I don't even, since this is kind of spontaneous, I don't know what it'll be, but it won't be terrible. And then you can also hit me up on X at Mike Atchison 5. So I'm more of a consumer than a producer, but I And I'm on Facebook at Campus Comics Cast on our Facebook page. Yep.
Yeah. That reminds me. That's one of the things I like about you guys is that when I leave comments about the episodes, Scott is right on it usually, and you often will chime in as well. I don't know what Shad has against me, but I'm sure it's all my fault. I'm just
busy.
I'm just teasing.
Hey, Facebook is for us old people. He's probably on some newfangled stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, Shad gets a lot of credit because I know he created your theme song, your intro for that.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
Folks, yeah. If for no other reason, you can stop listening after the intro theme song if you want, but it's basically our version, Shad's version. He created it. It was my idea to use the song Johnny Cash.
Yes.
I've been everywhere, but it's basically comic book themed with Shad playing the guitar and singing it, and I just love it.
It is so good.
Yeah, I just have so much fun with it. But yeah, you can stop listening after that if you like, but definitely check out the music.
Wait, does he have is there like a full version of this? Like he does the entire song? Like
no, he just did the one verse or
that
so.
Bit?
Yeah,
okay.
Because he told me, he says that is an exhausting song to sing.
I bet. Because
you're ripping off the cities or whatever, the locales in comic books, but we talked about, I have a list of potential other cities, like for a what do you call it, a sequel to it or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Very cool. I'm looking forward to hearing that whenever that arrives. So.
Okay.
All right. Again, Mike, thank you so much. Like I said, Mike has given his contact information. I will have that in the show notes as well for people to access. However, if people would like to send feedback to me about this episode, please send email to longboxreview@gmail.com. You can leave voicemail or text me at 208-953-1841. Or you can also contact me on social media at Longbox Review, especially on Blue Sky, because that's where I'm most active these days, not on that Twitter thing anymore all that much. And Mike, how can I get you to be on Blue Sky so we can go chat back and forth?
I keep talking about doing it. In fact, if I just make a note for myself, I will do it before the night's out and create me a Blue Sky account. How about that?
All right. No pressure.
No, I even talked about it on Campus Comics. I'm like, I'm going to get me Blue Sky, but I've got to do it now. Okay.
All righty. Well, anyway, again, Mike, thank you so much. And the rest of you, thanks for listening, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.